Perfect. Awesome. Yay. So you'll know a little bit about the other girls, but you don't all know about each other. So I don't want to take too much time doing that, but I think during this time that we're going to have together, we're really going to connect a lot and get just into very vulnerable, intimate spaces and conversations. And it's just nice that you'll get to know each other along the way. But, when I put you in the groups, just kind of say who you are. And, I almost all of you are at FGCU. One of you is not. So if you're not, just say so. So, you kind of all know where you're at. Maybe talk about what your major is or something like that, but just very briefly. And then what I'd like you to do is talk about how your week went. Okay, so our last and first, it was our first theme, was intention. And we talked about what intention was, and then you kind of explored what that might look like for you. And then I'd like you to just talk about how that played out in your week. Let's just say this. So remember we talked about we're not having a report card. So this is not like, oh, I didn't do it, and beat yourself up and, talk about all the different ways that you messed it up and whatever all happened. So we're not going to do that. Okay. If you didn't get to do it, then just say what your intention is for this coming week. If you all said that you've done the practice about exploring what is nurturing for you. So talking about what those things are for you and what steps you're going to take to make that happen next week. And if you did do that this week, what that was like. Okay, so I'd like you to talk about that. I want to give you about 10 minutes to do that. So let's do 12 minutes. Two of you will have a little longer to speak. So we talked about mindful listening as well. So and mindful listening and mindful speech. So we don't want to come into the group and everybody just chit-chatting like we're at a coffee shop, okay? Which is nice though, that's nice to do. But we really want to be intentional about our time together. So when you come together and kind of introduce yourself, then speak for your amount of time. I'm going to give you, so you'll have the 4 minutes for the group that has 3. And you'll have a little more time, I'm sorry, in the group that has more people. And so you'll speak for your 4 minutes. I will say, hey, it's 4 minutes. And for the group that has 6, I'll let you know when it's the 6. Okay, so I'll just kind of tell you when it's the time to switch for whichever group you're in. Okay, and then the next person will speak. So again, it's not conversational, it's that you're speaking about yourself and your experience and what you're planning on doing and what you've done and how that's looked like for you as you practice this week, and what you will move into as far as next week if you didn't have that example. And then you'll switch to the next person when I prompt you, and we'll just do that going around with everyone. Does that make sense? And that's how always, whenever we have breakouts, unless I tell you otherwise, that's what a breakout will look like. That it's not just like having conversations so much as it is speaking and being listened to. Okay? All right.
Welcome back.
All right, we're waiting on the other 3. I'm glad you didn't get booted again. It's like, what happened? Yeah. Okay. It's gonna pull them back here in a second, so. Here we are. Welcome back. Hello. All right, we're missing Brianna. There we go. Okay. So hopefully that all worked out well with the timing. Did you all see the little message come up and everything? Okay, cool. All right. Little kitty. So I'd love to hear from you, anything you'd like to share. So just about what your experience was last week, like what you shared privately. Now you don't have to, but it's always nice if there's something that comes out of either listening to someone else or something that they experience in the moment when you're together, or just something you want to share with a larger group, from an experience last week, or just whatever is coming up for you, then we provide space to do that in the bigger group too. Most of the time in this larger group, I don't call out people, so it's more about, raising your hand that you want to share, always remembering that whatever was shared in the smaller group, when you come here, you're only going to share your own experience. So if somebody said resonated with you and then brought something up for you that you want to talk about, for example, that's fine, but don't share what the other person shared. Okay. Because that's for them to share or not share, in the larger group, if they do or don't want to. I don't make you do that. So that being said, I'd love to hear about how your week went. So whatever you're open to sharing, just you can raise your hand and unmute yourself, and then we can move forward with that. Yeah, go ahead, Brianna.
Okay, so I guess I'll just talk about the intention that I set at the beginning of the week. Even before this group, I used to just set intentions to have a good week and not let things, get to me personally or anything like that. But lately there's been, a few people in my life that have not made it like so enjoyable for me. So I set the intention that maybe I would distance myself, or kind of, I guess, not get rid of, I don't know how to word it, but, I guess disassociate myself with that toxic person. And I did that, which took a lot of courage. So my week was pretty good. Besides that, I guess my intention for next week would be just to take care of myself a little bit, because I haven't been doing that lately. So.
Yeah, I think we are all are culprits of that, of not taking really great care of ourselves. I generally speaking, I think a lot of us take care of ourselves last, if at all. So, really we're about setting that intention here, generally speaking, about, really promoting that well-being and taking care of us first, knowing that when we're doing that, it really begins to align other things in our life. And so thank you for sharing that, Brianna. Thank you. Yeah. Does anybody else want to share? Yeah, go ahead, Kaylee.
I set an intention to just I really like how he talks about doing something that nurtures you. So I tried to do something like for myself every day this week. And I chose reading a lot of the time, and that felt nice to just kind of read a lot of self-help books. So it was nice to just kind of learn a little bit on the side from school, and just do a little something that I wanted to do and didn't really have a timeline or a deadline that had to be met. So it made it a little bit less anxiety inducing and more helpful to myself.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah. Anybody else want to share? Okay. All right. Did you all bring a raisin? Okay. Yes, I see one raisin. Okay, we're going to use it in a minute. I want to share a video here, just for a moment, as we not really wrap up, because we're going to start adding layers to our intention piece, but just kind of touch base again and touch in with intention. Again, as Kaylee mentioned, like not setting that timeline, where we're kind of really, I think the best way to explain it, really, because it's more of a feeling, is this kind of leaning into, right? So there's something that you want in your life, and in this case, we're working on promoting our own personal well-being, and finding more joy. And so how do we do that? Well, by setting an intention to do that, and so whatever it looks like for you, and then kind of leaning into that without that judgment piece. And we're going to talk more about that judgment piece today. But we talked about confirmation bias last time, and you kind of, what you look for is what you see, right? And so there's a really great video that I want to show here that really highlights that. So let's see. Okay. So you can all see that, okay? All right. All right. So how many of you have seen that video before? Okay. Oh, hold on. Oh, Woodland. Yay. Hi. You made it. Okay, so one of you has seen the video. Um, who noticed the gorilla? Okay. Did you also notice the changing of the color of the thing? No. What about the player leaving? Yeah. I had seen that before and I knew about the gorilla, which is why I looked for the video to share it. And I had not noticed the two other things, right? So the reason I share that video and why I really like to show it is I think it really emphasizes um, the this idea of confirmation bias, right? So you're looking for what you're expecting. You're having this focus. So they're saying watch. They're focusing your attention. Watch how many times the player in the white shirt. So you're so focused and you're so keyed in, right, on the players that are, because you're trying to get that number right. You're counting, that you miss all these other things, and it comes back to this idea what we did before, remember last week where we did this and we're looking so focused and we miss the bigger picture because there's a lot more going on than we even notice. And a lot of times we're going on automatic pilot and we miss a lot of stuff. How many times have you been driving in a car? So most of you drive, driving in a car. And this may have not happened to you before because you're fairly young. But get to a place and then wonder, oh my God, how did I even get here? Yeah, it's happened to some of you. Because you're like lost in thought, you're running on automatic pilot and you miss, you're lost in here. Ooh, and you miss everything else because you're doing this, right? And so we miss out on so much of our life. So when we're opening up here to these moments of well-being, I'm going to really encourage you not to miss them because they're there even in difficult moments that we'll talk more about later, okay? And even in the moments that you notice or you know, really moments of well-being, we don't fully let them in. We let them be fleeting. So we don't allow them to fully kind of get into our system, get into our body and really promote the well-being that we're looking for rather than just a moment. Because eventually we're going to talk about how we kind of use them as a stored memory and deepening these grooves in our brain. We'll talk about next time, and we use them almost like a treasure trove. But when we're even in the hard moments, those moments are there, and if we're focused on the hard moment, you miss the others. Okay, so opening up, and know and understanding that those moments are available, that they are there, and just noticing. Right, that's what we're going to be doing. So I think that video really highlights that. And the topic for today is mindfulness. So we're going to get a little bit into that and the meaning of it. But first, I want you to have an experience of it so we can talk about it a little more. So this is where you're going to use your little item. You're going to take so I don't know what item you have. And regardless, I asked you to bring a particular thing, but right now we're not naming it anything. So I'm going to have you pretend that you're an explorer from another planet. We're going to do some make believe. And you've come to Earth. And now you have to report back to, you know, your alien station, your supervisor, whatever, about what you find here. And you found this particular item that you have in your hand. And you're going to have to check it out because you've never seen it. You have no idea what this thing is. And so you're going to have to experience it so you can explain what it's like. Okay. So I'm going to walk you through the process of what you're going to do. And in the meantime, I want you to really, really listen for each step. And we're going to use all our senses to experience this item. Okay. So first we're going to use our eyes. So I want you to hold it in your hand and look at it and see what you notice. So you've never seen this before, right? So what is the texture? What is the color? You know, really just kind of, does it change colors? Just really looking at it and exploring it, turning it over. Yeah. And noticing during this too, are there any thoughts about this item coming into your mind? So just bring a curiosity to it. And then a feeling. So sensing with your fingers. So kind of rolling it around in your fingers. Like, what does it feel like? Is it smooth? Is it soft? Does it have ridges? Um, yeah. What is it? Is it sticky? Is it hot, cold? And then now taking a listen to it. So what does this thing sound like? We're noticing. Is there a sound? What is it? Okay. Then smelling it. Noticing, is it like pungent? Kind of tart? Maybe kind of sweet? Salty? Does it have no smell? Just noticing. And then the next thing we're going to do is taste. So there's going to be a process to it. So when you put it in your mouth, I don't want you to chew this item. You're just going to put it on your tongue and lay it there, and just first kind of roll it on your tongue and see what is the texture. So just notice the texture in your mouth when you put it in your mouth. Is there anything going?
Mine isn't quite edible. Do I stop to do that?
Can you do what?
Mine is not quite edible.
If it's not edible, you could probably put it in your mouth, but you're not going to swallow it. So unless it's something you can't put in your mouth, because I can't really see.
It's like a little metal part. I just don't want to because my hands aren't clean.
Then don't put it in your mouth. Okay.
Thanks.
All right. So if you have an edible item, it's in your mouth and you're kind of noticing the texture. You're noticing if there's anything going on in your mouth, any thoughts about this thing. And then whenever you're ready, taking a bite into it and noticing, has the texture changed? Is the flavor changed? Again, what's going on in your mouth and your body? Are you having any thoughts about this thing? Kind of noticing what's there. Just being really curious about it. And then whenever you're ready, swallowing it. And as you swallow it, noticing the actual act of swallowing. And as it's going down, what that sensation and feeling is like. Yeah. So I'd love to hear what that was like. So if you're this explorer coming to tell me what experience this was, this the item you found, what would you share about the way that it looked when you found it? What does this item look like? Go ahead, Kaylee.
Oh, good. Muted. That's great. I was already unmuted. Sorry if I was making any noise. It looked, I guess, brown and veiny and a little bit like translucent at spots, so you could tell it had almost like a skin around it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Anybody else? I don't know if you had a different item. Go ahead, Michaela.
Mine's not a raisin, just putting that out there before I start saying that it's something completely different.
Oh, but you didn't know what it is that you have. So, right? So you're reporting back, even if it was a raisin?
It's blue and clear, translucent, and it's smooth. There's no ridges or bumps or anything that would stop the motion if you rolled it.
Mm-hmm. So it was a smooth sensation when you were rolling it.
Mm-hmm.
What about when you listen to it?
If I tap it on something, it has a sound and it's quite loud, but just holding it up to my ear, silent.
Okay. What about anybody else when you listened to it or felt it? What was that like? Go ahead, Karina.
Mine, you can tell that it's not hollow when you listen to it if you tap on it a little bit. It was very smooth when hard or fully developed, I guess you could say. And the texture can go from smooth to completely mushy.
So it changes. Okay. Yeah. All right. What about the smell of their item?
The smelled like a bunch of ingredients. I couldn't really pinpoint a smell. It just smelled freshly made.
Okay. Anybody else? Nothing in the smell. It was just probably similar. Yeah, or not. What about when you put it in your mouth? What did you notice when you kind of rolled it around your tongue? Were there any thoughts associated with it when you did that, or did you notice anything happening physiologically, like in your mouth, or kind of what was that experience like? You guys are quiet. What about when you bit into it? How about that? So when you put it in your mouth, you kind of notice what it was like, and then you bit into it. Did you notice anything different from when you bit into it versus when you didn't? Go ahead, Kaylee.
I'll say that I guess the skin from rolling it around, it feels really soft, and when you bite it, it's a little bit tougher than expected. But I like raisins. I guess I never really mindfully eaten one before, but I never realized that you can like taste the tanginess of a fresh grape when you swallow it. That's something different that I had never really thought about before. But I literally ate like a handful of raisins before we started. So
Maybe next time I'll need to preface that. Yeah. Anybody else? So overall, like, what was the experience like? Was it different than what you were expecting? Again, you obviously know what your item is, and it makes it kind of hard to sort of dissociate from, I know what this item is, but when you're really experiencing it, like if you didn't know what it is, a lot of times people find that the experience is different than what they expected in some way, kind of like how you mentioned, Kaylee. And so did anyone have any experience like that? Go ahead, Michaela.
Well, for me, my item actually has like a sentimental value to it. And it kind of didn't take it away, but kind of didn't make me think about it as much. It was more of like just the physical aspects of it and what it is and how it sounds, like all the different senses. So that was kind of neat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did anyone notice their mouth water? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that just kind of happens. Did anyone have an expectation that it would be one way and it was different? Like, Kaylee, you mentioned kind of that. I've had people that don't actually like raisins. And it's been interesting to see some of the reactions there. So You were going to say something?
I was just gonna say that like if you have never eaten one, the skin feels pretty soft at first, but then when you chew into it, it's a little bit tougher than you expect. It's a little bit chewier, more dense. But you can tell it's like squishier in the middle, and it has like a tougher outside to it.
So I'm really curious about this because I think there's a really good point in something you said. So you said you ate a bunch of them before, right before this exercise, correct? Yeah.
Yes.
So
Thank you.
So tell me a little bit about what you noticed then and the difference between when you ate them before and when you ate it just now.
Eating more than one, I guess I just kind of like ate them and wasn't thinking about it because I've always eaten raisins. I ate them a lot as a kid. So that it's kind of like it was just popping in my mouth, I guess. Don't really think about it, but it was interesting to think about it. I had never really thought about all those sensations all at once, and it is a little bit grounding, I guess, to kind of think about all of that. So
yeah, there's a whole process called mindful eating, which involves pretty much what you just did. But that's every time that you're eating, or setting the intention to do it as often as you can, not necessarily your entire time you're eating, but at least moments throughout it or something. So it's really interesting to eat mindfully, because there's definitely people that find that things that they like or thought they like, they actually don't like, or things they thought they really didn't like, they actually enjoy. So there's that. And then you actually, eating your food is actually an experience. So most of the time we eat food not for the reason that we really should be eating food, which is to fuel our body. And a lot of times we'll overeat because we're eating mindlessly, because we'll be watching TV, because we're having a conversation, because we're eating while we're driving or studying or whatever. And then we can tend to overeat that way too. Or how many people eat when they're having an emotional breakdown? Yeah. You get stressed out. Some people do the opposite. Some people do not eat when they're stressed out. But so there's one. But a lot of people will not do that. You'll tend to want to eat, and you'll eat for comfort, so some kind of pleasure while you're in a struggle, which is, not really the purpose of eating. And it's more an emotional type thing. So when you're more present with your food, it really can be an experience. And I think it speaks a lot to what mindfulness is and the practice of mindfulness, which is our topic for today. And we're going to get to that in a little bit. But what I'd like to do before we start really diving deep into mindfulness and the practice of mindfulness and how to begin to use it in our life, I'd like to walk us through a meditation. Before I do that, I'd like to know by show of hands who has meditated before. So most of you, all of you, okay. Who's had a hard time with meditating? Hard time. Okay. Would you be brave and mind sharing why you have a hard time or what you consider to be a hard time?
You're talking to me, right?
And would any of you that raised your hand, because you said you had a hard time, and I want to know kind of what a hard time means to you and what your struggle is there with meditating.
Well, I have a hard time with it because it's just hard for me to stop thinking, I think. And I think when you're trying to meditate, it's supposed to be empty your thoughts, not really have anything. I guess I haven't done it too many times, so I don't really know how to fully go through the process of it. But it's really difficult for me to sit still for so long because my head just has so many things going on inside of it that I can't really focus on letting go and just relaxing in the moment.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. I think, Nicole, you were going to say something.
I wasn't sure whether you were.
Sorry, I was looking at you, but you're supposed to know I'm looking at you. That's okay. Sorry, I'm going to have to. Yeah.
No worries. For me, when I first started, because I have an app, it was just difficult for me to focus on the breath. I had a lot of those type of meditations, and so I was just so overwhelmed with my day, what was ahead of me, the past, just those kind of thoughts were just scattered brained. So that made it really challenging to complete the whole meditation.
Okay. Anybody else?
For me, it's kind of funny, but my dog does not leave me alone. Like if I put him in his cage, so he doesn't like bother me as I'm sitting on the ground, he will cry and cry and cry and cry until I let him out. If I leave him outside of the room, he'll keep on putting his nose up to the door and making noise until I let him in. So like basically, I have no choice but to have him around, and he gets really annoying. So that's my biggest thing. It's like having a kid, but like dog form.
Yep, I totally get that. You weren't here when it happened, but Andrew's dog, actually, Marley, was doing that thing.
Exactly.
He's very anxious, and he was getting in my lap, and he was whining and carrying on, and I had to let him out, and I put him in his crate, and then he was screaming bloody murder, and so I understand.
Yeah, right now I have him busy.
Good. Excellent.
He pops up every now and then, as you can tell.
Yeah, but there are ways around that, I have found. So, and I ask you guys, and thank you for sharing, because a lot of times we have preconceived notions about meditation and what meditation is, or what we think meditation is supposed to be like. And then it's part of one of the things that it serves as a barrier. And so I just wanted to address some of those things before we go there, because we are going to go there. So part of the big thing about meditation is just being, really. So there's different types of meditations. There's like mantra meditations where you could be saying a particular sound or a word, or something over and over in your head as your sort of focal point. There are guided meditations that you could do like on an app, or someone's like leading you through a visualization. So there's a bunch of ways to meditate that actually don't even involve sitting. So at one point we'll do a walking meditation where you have your eyes open. For some people, running and things like that is meditative. So some of those things, and even like Tai Chi or even yoga, like they're more like a meditation in motion. Really, meditation is just being, and it's being present. And for our purposes, what I'm going to be working with you on is mindfulness meditation. And mindfulness meditation is essentially just being with what is here right now. As simple as that. So if your thoughts are scattered, that's okay. The thing becomes that we have an expectation that our mind is supposed to be quiet, right? So we bring an expectation that it's supposed to be quiet. My mind is supposed to be quiet. I'm supposed to be still. So we bring all this expectation and these shoulds to it, and then we feel like we're failing. And so just like when you're training a puppy, just like when you're learning to ride a bike, just, like anything like that, it takes practice. And then eventually you can get more in the hang of it. And even then, each time that you sit, if you're doing a sitting meditation, will be different. So depending on what's going on in your life, what you just came from, what's all happening, you can have a lot of, and a lot of sort of agitation. And you can even use that agitation as part of your meditation, noticing what's here, not judging it. And we'll get into that when we start talking more about mindfulness and what mindfulness specifically means. But I want to walk us through a meditation for a moment, and just follow along as you can. We're going to start with the breath, because most of the time that's kind of where classically we start. But eventually we're going to move through different places, if you will, along our body that you can meditate using. So like sound, you can meditate to like even just noticing your emotions. noticing your thoughts. Yeah. And there's actually something I'd like to do concerning your thoughts when we talk about the breath. So I'm going to have you sit in an upright posture. Now, sometimes people, and even myself, will meditate laying down. That can be really helpful if you have a condition that sitting too long is painful, or anything like that. Okay. However, what we want to do and we're practicing here is presence. So sitting in an upright position will, because otherwise later in the day you get more tired and then you can fall asleep. And you can use it for that purpose sometimes, you know, really practicing presence and even noticing sounds and stuff can be very calming and soothing. And if you have trouble sleeping, you can use it in that way. But when you're beginning to notice, and here's the thing, right? So we're constantly running around and doing. We're doing stuff. We're going here, we're going there, we're doing schoolwork, we're doing work, okay? So what we're doing now is just taking time to settle and notice ourselves. Eventually, again, we're starting with the breath, but when you begin to notice and connect just kind of what's going on up here, not getting lost in the story about it, but just noticing, just like you did with a raisin. Okay, noticing you have emotions. Okay, I'm feeling this emotion right now. What does this emotion feel like? And explore that, just like you did the raisin. So I'm really feeling really agitated. I'm feeling so many thoughts. Oh, and you use that as your meditation. Just looking at it, being curious about it. I'm anxious right now. I'm really panicked. I'm nervous. What is that nervous feeling? I feel that nervousness in my chest. What does that feel like? It feels tight. It feels tingly. It feels right. So just exploring it and being curious about it without judging it. Okay. But like I said, we're gonna do a little bit of that right now. Okay. So sitting up nice and tall. And if you're able, putting your feet on the ground, really contacting the earth, placing your hands in your lap. And we're going to take a few mindful breaths, breathing deeply through your nose and exhaling audibly but gently through your mouth. So inhale. Inhale. And one more time, inhaling through your nose and exhaling through your mouth. Now allowing your breath to come to its neutral, natural rhythm. And starting just at your nose, noticing the breath as it comes in and out of your nostrils. And becoming curious here, is the air cool? Is it warm? You may notice as you inhale, it's cool, and as you exhale, it's warm or not. Just noticing what's there. And bringing your awareness to other aspects of your breath, like your belly. And it can help sometimes for those of us that breathe more in our chest. A lot of times we're not breathing fully. And so placing your hand on your belly and noticing as you breathe. So not trying to change your breath in any way, but just noticing. Noticing as your belly expands and contracts with each in-breath and out-breath. Noticing your chest as your chest rises and falls. Noticing your rib cage expanding and contracting. And it could be helpful here to place your hands on your chest and notice the feeling underneath your hand of your breath. This breath that really sustains us, that we take so often for granted. It's aliveness right here. You might even notice your shoulders slightly rising and falling as you breathe. And you may also notice your thoughts kind of running all over the place, judging yourself, your mind wandering, thinking about your busy week or what's coming next, or thinking about dinner. And if you notice that, that's okay. So when you notice that moment of noticing, that moment of mindfulness, come back to the breath. Whatever aspect of the breath brings or calls your attention most. So that could be the nose, the belly, the chest, and just noticing your whole body breathing. So gently, kindly, as if your mind wanders, bringing it back. Imagining almost like a puppy that you're trying to train. Gently, kindly, you might even laugh about it. Just noticing. And it's okay. It can be helpful when your thoughts wander and you notice that you're thinking. In the moment that you notice, that moment of mindfulness, you could just call it thinking. Thinking. And come back to the breath. Just giving this gift to yourself, this settling in, just noticing, and just being, knowing you don't have to be anywhere else right now, but right here. It can be helpful to imagine too, when those thoughts come, imagine them like a river. Just flowing by, not having to get lost in the story. And notice through all that, you're still breathing. Taking a moment to recognize here that you are not your thoughts. Your brain thinks, and your heart beats, and your lungs breathe. You are not your thoughts. You have thoughts. You can let them go. And when you're ready, gently opening your eyes. Okay. All right. I'm going to give you a few moments. We're going to take a break. Okay. I'll give you 5 minutes. We'll come right back. Okay. All right. So you can go grab something to eat really fast or grab a drink if you need it, go potty. See you back in 5 minutes. know is kind of how the meditation was for you all. So what was that like? What did you notice? Did anything come up? Just like to get a general feeling. That was our first meditation. We're definitely going to be doing that each time, and I'm actually going to encourage you to do more of it. Because here's the thing, as you begin connecting and being present and noticing these things and having this curiosity, you begin to learn more about yourself and about your reactivity. And when you begin to notice, then you can begin making adjustments. And that's where we get into the mindfulness part of this practice and what we're going to be learning and doing together. So would anybody like to share what that was like for them, the meditation? Go ahead, Nicole.
For me, I'd say it was really calming. But the only disappointing part was my upper back was hurting. So I was trying to like move it a little bit, like I was trying to sit upright, but for some reason I might have been just slouching a little bit. So I like noticed that my back was hurting a little bit.
Okay. So, but you noticed, did you realize it was hurting before?
No.
Yeah. So that was a moment of noticing what was going on, because a lot of times we tune things out, and that's a perfect example. So when we're not paying attention to ourselves and we're too caught up with other things, we don't realize that we're having a discomfort or that we're needing care or that, and meeting our needs in the moment because we're too distracted with other things. And so that is just an example of that. Emotional things can come up too. So I've sat down and not realized or even thought that I was emotional and just started bawling and noticed what's there. Oh, wow, I'm crying. And I've been holding this in and I didn't even notice. Because when you start getting into that place of stillness, then these things come up. And sometimes we have pains that are actually emotional, right? So we can have a tenseness. We can really hold a lot of things too in our shoulders and stuff. And so you'll begin to notice, oh, I'm tense here. Oh, I didn't even realize I was stressed out, or, whatever. So whatever that might be, I've heard all those things and I've experienced some of them myself. So yeah. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Anybody else want to share what it was like with a meditation? Go ahead, Kaylee.
I really enjoy meditating. It's something that I used to be really into, but I used to meditate and do yoga a few times a week. But I kind of fell off that. I got too distracted with life and school. I worked full time. I went to school full time. So I had to take a step back and slow down a little bit and start to give some time to myself to really just be. So I love meditating. My biggest issue is commitment. So as much as I love it and I know how good I feel after it, it's just sitting down and actually doing it is my biggest obstacle. So it was really nice to be able to give myself the time to just sit here, be with myself, and really listen to your words. They're really encouraging, really something that I can really hold on to for some things that I've been struggling with lately. So it was just really nice and helpful to give myself a moment to just breathe and relax and just be here for myself.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and it's a time of just self-care. And, people have asked me before, how long do you meditate, right? And I really hesitate to say, because then they use that like, oh, I can't meditate for 45 minutes, I can't, right? And it's like, you know what? You need to do what you need to do for yourself. And so you hit a very valid point, Kaylee, that life gets busy and then we kind of fall off our own radar in the busy. And our society, really, we pat ourselves on the back. Like a lot of times, I know people will ask me, or even I'll ask somebody else, oh, how you doing? Oh, I'm so busy. Like busy is some kind of like, woohoo, I'm busy, right? Because there's always a busy, there's always things to do, and where are we in that? And we really have to come back to remember ourselves, what do we need? And so that moment of just stillness, whether it's, in the morning. So for me, I find that that's when I'm most awake. And it really sets me up for the rest of my day. and to give myself that space and that time before the whole day just gets away from me, right? So, and I'm not, my friend says to me, oh, you're a morning person. Actually, no, I'm not. But I specifically get up in the morning because that's when nobody needs me. My kids aren't trying to get me. I don't have to be at work yet. The phone isn't ringing, right? So this is my time. It's my time. And the first thing I do, I get up, I go to the bathroom, and I go sit in my meditation space. So having a place, optimally, you'd have a place to do that. So kind of like when you go there, just like when you're going to go to bed or you're going to go somewhere, your body's like, okay, this is what I'm doing right now. So that, you know, so ideally you kind of have your spot that you go to, that's your space. And that's what you do when you go to that space. So I have a space and it's in my closet. I have a long walk-in closet. I'll send you guys a picture of it. A long walk-in closet, and I have like a mandala in the back, and I have my little, like my stones and crystals that I use, and my sage that I like to use, and I have my meditation cushion. Like it's all set up for that. And I sit there each morning, and that's like the first thing I do. And if it really is a busy morning and I got up later because I was tired and I was practicing self-care by staying in a little later because sleep's important, then I say, okay, well, I can't meditate 45 minutes this morning. I can't even barely meditate 30, or you know what? I'm going to take 10 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it is, take that time. So don't make it like, oh, I can't meditate 30 minutes today or whatever it is, so I'm just not going to do it. Just really make the time to sit down and do it anyway. Okay, there's all kinds of apps and stuff like that that you can use. You know, I know we're talking about mindfulness meditation right now, which is really, you're not necessarily using anything or guided, but it can be helpful if you find a guided one that's helpful to you, especially initially. If you're wanting to just do an awareness of breath and it's just too hard for you to do on your own. But sometimes, like, I don't necessarily listen to something guided like that. I wasn't trained that way. And I think if you can just sit with whatever is in the moment, that's really helpful to allow yourself to process things. Sometimes it'll help me on the insight timer to just listen to like the timer itself. You can just be blank and just be a timer and it'll ding you in and out like I dinged you. Or you can put a background like of water running, or so just some kind of thing that's not distracting to you. Okay, so just do what works for you. But again, if you can't do it in the morning, then do it sometime in the middle of your day, do it at night. Just find the time and try to make it consistent, whether it's 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. Optimally, I'd like you to meditate at least 20 minutes a day. So I'd like you to really try to work on that, because I think no matter how long you do it, even if it's just for a few breaths, just noticing that, like that alone, just like really when you're in a moment of like, oh, and you're like freaking out, just taking like that can just really, that really de-escalates. And when you do it, putting your hand over your heart, that actually releases oxytocin and helps to calm. So if you're having a hard time in the middle of your day, in the middle of something, just doing that a few times and then moving forward, okay? But you know, we're setting intentions, and in the meditation, there's a purpose to it of looking into yourself, learning more about yourself, diving deep into this practice. And so really looking at your schedule, finding when that can look, what that can look like for you. Ideally it'd be every day, but if you can't, then just set the commitment. I'm going to do it Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or, you know, whatever. Okay. Decide when that's going to be and what time of the day, and then move toward that this week. Okay. So, I'd like to hear from you all what mindfulness, you believe mindfulness means. So when you're practicing mindfulness, what is that? Go ahead, Woodward.
I don't know if it's like right, but I just know whenever I practice mindfulness, I try to become aware of every aspect. And I know I tend to be aware of everything, but like, I mean, like taking everything down to the atom, like trying to become fully aware of whatever it is that I'm being mindful about.
Yep. So awareness, that is absolutely, yes. And there's other components. Does anyone can maybe hit upon them? outside of awareness? Go ahead, Michaela.
I was gonna say that I tend to focus on like the physical component of it, and it will like alleviate like the emotional part. So, because I do practice mindfulness quite frequently, and I've gotten good at meditation now, and to the point where my mind isn't racing when I do meditate, and it allows me to like step back from those emotions and just like focus on my physical being and being in the moment.
Yeah. So in the moment, that's the other piece. Absolutely. So an awareness and being in the moment, meaning that you're not stuck in the past thinking about something that already happened that you can't change, okay, because that's back there, and not ruminating and going on and on about the future, worrying about something that may or may not happen. So let me ask you this, by a show of hands, how many times have you worried about something that didn't happen? Yeah, happens a lot. Not to say that nothing we worry about never happens, okay, because that's not true, but most of the time what we worry about actually doesn't happen. And we expend a lot of energy stressing ourselves out for no reason. Okay, so when you're practicing mindfulness, it's being present in this moment, because this right here is the moment that we have, this one, and then the next one, but it's this one, this moment. Okay, so we'll talk later about how to wisely use things that have happened in the past and how to let them go and how to be present in this moment. Okay, but there's another key factor besides presence and awareness, and that's with kindness, without judgment, with compassion. Because I know that I tend to be very hard on myself, and a lot of times we have that. So we make mistakes, and then we beat ourselves up about it, and then we stay in that sort of narrative, okay, about who we think we are, right, about things that we've done, or something that somebody else told us about us, or what society says we're supposed to be like, or what we should be or shouldn't be, or whatever. So there's a lot of stories that arise from that impact how we feel, what we do, and things like that. There is a quote that I absolutely love from the deepest part of my being that comes from Viktor Frankl. And he wasn't talking about it in the sense of mindfulness, right? So that wasn't like a term thing that he was talking about or anything like that. But I think it's a beautiful quote that really speaks to what mindfulness is about. Do you know who Viktor Frankl is? No. He wrote a book called The Meaning of Life. And he was a Holocaust survivor. So I think he was a psychologist, yeah, and from Austria, and he went into the concentration camps. And so he wrote a book about that experience and about people who didn't make it and those he did and things he noticed, and just all about that experience, which was very, obviously difficult in a way that we can't even imagine, right? So what he says is, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. I think that's really powerful and really beautiful, because we tend to be very reactive. So something happens, there's a trigger, right? There's that stimulus. So something says something to us, something happens that we didn't expect, whatever it is. And that hits your system, your nervous system, and then you're like, right? So you freak out, you get stressed out, you get scared, you get anxious, you feel like, oh my God, why did I just say that? right? So you get nervous, all these things, right? And a lot of times you can't control that. It just happens. So some external thing happens, stimulates your nervous system, and then you react. And it's just like, right, an impulse. But when you begin to become more aware and curious about the things around you, then this is why he says you're free. You really tap into a freedom, because it allows that space from the reactivity. So you'll notice that's why this sitting and meditating and noticing is important, because we're starting only with our breath, but we'll expand it. And when you begin to notice, oh, my back hurts, right? Oh, I'm sad. Oh, what does sadness feels like? And then rather than getting lost in the story about it, you begin to feel it and sense it in your body. Then when that moment arises again, seemingly, I'm going to tell you, this is like magic. Okay, I swear it's like magic. When this experience happens to you and you've been practicing the noticing, so you're practicing before you need it, per se, right? Then something occurs and you notice, oh, I'm feeling tingly. Oh, I'm nervous. And so it gives you that space of the noticing that then you're like, oh, okay, I'm getting nervous. What's going on here? And it happens in seconds. That then you can actually determine how you're going to proceed and actually respond to the situation instead of just like, right? And then regretting later, why did I say that? Why did I do that? Oh my God, right? Because you're just reacting to external. And the thing is that these external stimulus is happening all day long in multiple areas, constantly. So our body is constantly getting stressed. But when you get to realize that you're all, and I love this meditation that I'd like to do sometime, you're like the mountain. You can imagine that you're like a mountain, that you're strong, you're firm, you're there, okay, in all your beauty. And there's all these things, there's seasons changing, there's people, walking on you, there's all kinds of stuff going on around a mountain, right? But you're still the mountain, and you're solid, and you're there, and all these things are going on, but those things are not you, okay? And so you begin to have that space to respond to your life and move in the way that you want for your life without being reactive all the time and getting lost in your thoughts or getting lost in your reactivity or your emotions, because you are not your emotions and you are not your thoughts. We can use them as guideposts, but they are not you. They're not who you are, okay? You are not your past. You are not your mistakes. Okay, so I think these are very important concepts. I want to show you something, and I want to get a sense of what you see. And we're going to talk about that, okay? So I'm going to share my screen again. You can all see this. Okay. So you may or may not have seen this before. So if you have, then just try to look at it with new eyes. And notice what you see here. So just take a moment and see what's there. Okay, so I can see some of you, and I don't know how many of you can see me, but I'd like to know what you're seeing. So somebody unmute themselves, and I'd like to hear from all of you, actually. So Woodland, I'll let you go first. You see.
You might want to pick somebody else because I've already seen this.
Okay. But just tell me what you see, though. Just tell me what you see.
Okay, so the first thing I see is a young lady, and she's looking away.
Okay.
She has the feather in her hair. It looks like she has, I don't know what kind of hat that thing is. It's like a over her hair, and she has like a fluffy collar on. or not collar, like, what do you call those? Like a coat.
Like a fur coat? Yeah.
Like a fur coat.
Yeah. Okay. What about you, Nicole?
Possibly a necklace on her neck.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you see the same thing that she sees? A
Yeah.
young woman?
Yep.
Okay. What about you, Kaylee? Do you see the same?
Yes, I see the young woman looking away.
Okay. And I can't see the rest of you. So give me a shout out because you're not on my screen. Karina?
Yeah, at first I saw the young lady, just looking away. And then as I looked at the center up below her hair or whatever, it started to picture more of the old lady just looking down.
Okay. So you saw a young lady, but then you saw an old lady. Yeah. Okay. What about you, Brianna?
I see the young lady with the fur coat that's looking away.
And you, Michaela?
I see the lady as well.
Which
The
one?
young lady.
Okay. I think I called on all of you. If there's somebody I didn't call on, please shout your you out because I can't see you all. I think that was everyone. So some of you said, is there anybody so nobody, it sounds like, saw an old woman first? Do the ones of you that saw a young woman see an old woman now that you know that somebody else did? Brianna's like, It's like, nope, don't see an old lady. Yeah. What about you, Michaela?
Not really, no.
No? Okay. So I'm going to show you, and I want to know if you see it now. Okay. So this is the old lady's eye. She has a really big nose. This is her lip. And she's got a really big chin, and she's looking down here. Do you see it now, Brianna? Mm-hmm. What about you, Michaela?
Yeah, I see it.
Is there anybody that doesn't see it now? That didn't see it before? Okay. I've had people in my class, even after somebody showed them, argue that that wasn't there. Okay. They were like, nope, I don't see it. And she was getting aggravated because she said she couldn't see that. So I think that this is a really good example of something that occurs that we do, is that we'll be having a conversation with somebody, and somebody will have their perception of whatever interaction you're having, and you will have yours, and they won't align. So they could be seeing a young person, the other person could be seeing an old person, and you're both exactly correct. But you will argue that you're right, and they're not, right? Because you're seeing the situation through your lens, through your this. And you're assuming that they can't be correct. And so we oftentimes live in a story that we tell ourselves through our perceptions and experiences from things in the past, through things we were told, through whatever, right? And this is how we see the world, through this lens. So when we begin to practice mindfulness and this curiosity without judging, to me, it's almost like you're cleaning off a glass, like with glass, or like you have glasses and you're cleaning them off. Because then you start seeing things in a more clear fashion and realize that it's not just what you think, that there's actually other ways than how you're experiencing something. So when you begin having interactions and becoming more curious rather than offended, or this feeling like I'm right, because how can you possibly be correct? Because I don't see that. Then it begins to change your interactions with other people and your interactions with the world. is a pretty cool thing. Yeah. So with mindfulness, we talked about, you know, what mindfulness is, and again, that not judgment and coming from a place of curiosity. So there's 4 properties to mindfulness, and one is recognizing our actual experience, not what we want it to be, or embellishing it, or making it more than it is, or pretending it's not difficult when it is, right? Because we talked about this is not just about being joyful and happy all the time. Even happy people are not happy, quote unquote, happy all the time. But when you look at this is what it is right now, and we'll have an exercise experience the next time when you bring your ice cube. This is what it is right now, and not making it into something different, then we can relieve ourselves a bit of suffering. Because we'll talk about this more later too, but I think it's an important point right now, that this part of self-compassion practice is recognizing that we all have pain in our life in some fashion, whether a current type of pain or some difficulty that we're going through, even physical pain, emotional pain. We all have pain, but suffering is optional. And we cause our own suffering by getting lost in stories about things, of having expectations of things being some X way that who knows who said was supposed to be, right? When we look through our lens and are very rigid about our experiences and our expectations, then we end up suffering. And we cause that suffering on our own. So it really impacts how we experience our life. And so there's a freedom in recognizing that and moving forward in your life with that information. Okay. We talked about being present in the moment and not being lost in the future or the past. Understanding that the moment is constantly changing. And it's one thing to say that, and it's another to experience it, which is why I typically use the ice cube right now, and we'll use it later, because it's, to me, it's a very powerful sort of way to emphasize how that works. So change is hard. Right now, the whole entire world had a massive change and shift all at once. I don't know. I think that maybe that's the first time in history that we're aware anyway, that that's happened. So who would say change is hard? Yeah. Change is hard. So when you begin to recognize, however, that things will change, there's also a freedom in that. So recognizing when something is difficult, just saying, yeah, this is hard right now, not pretending that it's hard. Okay, and then we'll work through and walk through how do you navigate that hard, but just knowing this is hard right now, and it won't be hard all the time. And also recognizing this is a moment, this is amazing, and taking that in. I'm having a wonderful time, this is incredible. And then experiencing it in the moment for what it is, knowing that too will change. Because there's also suffering in wishing something was some other way, right? Like, oh, I wish it was like the good old days, or it was like, you know, I wish it was like I was like sitting on the beach again like I did before, right? And this is where I talk about our suffering, because that already happened, and you take it in when it comes in, and this is a moment of well-being, this is a moment of joy here right now. Take it in and let it fuel your heart and your soul. And just know, and don't hang on to it, you know, like this with tight grips, okay? Because that too will change. And that's okay. And it's the ebb and flow of life. So I want you to just take your fist for a second and clench them really hard. Okay, so when you're holding on to something, like we don't want it to change, right? We're holding it, or we're holding on for our dear life, right? You're holding it. And then just letting it go. And noticing what that feels like. When you're holding on to something really tightly and when you let it go. There's a visceral, somatic, you know, experience with that. And you can see how it could probably feel uncomfortable when you're holding on to something really tightly, and kind of this, or at least when you let it go. So just understanding that we can get through it, and that knowing that it'll change gives us the courage. It gives us the courage and the hope to keep going, knowing that this too shall pass. Okay. So this is hard right now, this with COVID, we can't just do our regular normal things, but it's also an opportunity. It's an opportunity too. And so when we start to shift into that mode, it can really help a lot to bring us, some hope and healing. Okay. And then we talked about not getting lost in judgment and thinking about an experience is supposed to be X way, knowing that it can be any number of ways. And whatever it is in that moment is what it is right now. And being curious when you're interacting with other people, especially if it's maybe perhaps something you don't agree with, becoming curious, like you don't know their story. You don't know where they're coming from. You don't know if they had a bad day. You don't know if, they've been hurt, and all these things have come up in their life that have made them interact with you in this way right now. Because not everyone practices presence, right? And even me, who understand about it, it's a lifelong practice. There's times that I'm like, oh, wow, right? So I'll be in the middle of a thing and then I'll notice, oh yeah, I really try to release judgment. I used to be way worse about it, judging people and stuff all the time, but I still do it sometimes. I'm way better, but I still do it because we're human. And so we these are some of the things that we do that are kind of inherent to us because of all sorts of things. But that doesn't mean that we can't do something different. And when we notice, learning from that and coming back to the present. And it's just a practice, just like when we're noticing the breath, you do it over and over and over, forever, right? So you get lost in a story, you get lost in stuff, and then you come back to the present. I want to share with you what I find to be a very powerful story of a way that I practice presence. And all of you know my story with my son, enough to know that that's why we're here, okay, together at this moment. I can tell you that if it wasn't because of my mindfulness and self-compassion practice, I have no idea where I would be right now. Because I can absolutely and have gotten stuck in a story about why, and gotten a story about guilt and shame, and why did I do this, and why didn't I do that, and what if I'd done this, and what if I'd done that, on and on and on. And it's a rabbit hole of hell. And whether it's to, hopefully you're none of your probably parents, right? But I'm sure you've had a circumstance that you have gone back to over and over and over and over and over. And at some point, it's no longer serving you. Okay, it's one thing to go back to something and have a learning moment and to be able to use that and move forward. It's another to just go over and over and over and over something you cannot change. And that's the suffering. So when you become present, you can really be in your life and really be present for your life, because this is your life right now. And whatever is going on right now will change. Okay, so a very specific way that I use this practice was I got into some weird panic attacks. I've never had panic attacks in my whole life. And I don't even know how to explain it, but just needless to say, I was going over a bridge one day and had a complete attack that I was going to go off the bridge. And I was in hysteria. It was like it was some other person. I don't even know how to explain it. It was like my heart was pounding. I was sweating. I was literally screaming. I was screaming in my car by myself, gripping my wheel, thinking that I was going to go off the bridge in hysteria. And it scared the bejesus out of me. I was shaking. I was crying. I was like, oh my God. Okay, because I'm like, I don't want to die. Why am I going to go off a bridge, right? But there was like this weird thing. I don't even know. So I went into a complete attack, and I didn't even know what it was at the moment. And I was so scared. I called my doctor the next day because I was like, what is happening to me? So what happened then is that every time I was going to go over the bridge, so then there's the anticipation. I'm going to go over a bridge. I'm going to go over a bridge. Now I'm scared something's going to happen to me. Okay, and so then each time I was having this situation, and then it was like, well, let me go. What if I don't go on a bridge? What if I go around, right? And don't go on a bridge anymore, right? So then it's going to impact my whole life. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that because I'm going to try to avoid the bridge because, oh my God, it's going to happen. But then it was happening not even on a bridge. Like, I'm just going to hit a car. I'm going to, so then it just kept progressing. The doctor, what did the doctor want to do? Give me medicine. Okay. I took medicine like a day and went into a complete freak attack. I was like, I'm done. No more medicine. Okay. So that's not to say that, that medicine is not appropriate in certain circumstances, because I have a child on medicine and things like this. So if you need to be on medicine, that's not wrong. I'm just saying, for me, that was not in that moment the way. Okay. So I practiced presence. When I'd go over the bridge, I knew logically that I've been over that bridge a million times and I was perfectly fine. So I knew that I could go off the bridge. Not go off the bridge. I knew that I could not go off the bridge, that it's possible to go over the bridge and not. So I knew this logically, but whatever happened wasn't logical. So I would practice presence. Look at the sky. The sky is blue. There's a lot of clouds. Look at the clouds. There's different shapes. There's some that are white. There's some that are, oh, look, this looks like it's going to rain. Oh, look at, over there at the horizon, there's buildings. Oh, look at that building. It has a peak. The other one's lower. Okay. Oh, look, there's a palm frond in the middle of the bridge. Well, that's odd. How did it get there? There's no trees around here. Okay. So you get the point. So wherever I was doing, I became present. I got out of this, ooh, right? I'm going to go off the bridge. Oh my God, what's it? Right. And just, I'm here right now. What is around me? This is what it's around me. So I would name those things. Okay. I also carried sometimes like a little worry stone. I don't know if you've seen those. It's a little stone that has like a groove for your thumb. In my car, I would touch it. I would feel it. So I would practice presence of sensation. Oh, there's something. Okay. This is in my finger. I can feel this. Okay. Sometimes it was just tapping on myself. I'm here. I can feel myself tapping. Okay. Sometimes it was phone a friend. Okay, call my husband, I'm talking, right? So now I'm having a conversation. So I'm present in what I'm speaking and I'm listening, and I'm not lost in here and all the, right? Because sometimes our heads like go off on a whole tangent. Okay, so this is why I tell you, you are not your thoughts. Your thoughts can go all completely haywire, as did mine, for obvious reasons. Okay, I was going through extreme trauma. So that can happen, and I'd never experienced that before. But practicing presence and being in that moment, what is around me, and using that as your anchor. So if it's not your breath, and we'll get into these other things, it's things are in your vicinity. This is now. This is here. This is where I'm at. Okay. And I think that can be an extremely important tool to get lost, to become present out of those stories that we tell ourselves, because our brains are like going woo all the time. Right? Like we talked about meditation, it won't be quiet. They're like woo, saying all kind of stuff all the time, and you're like, wow. Have you ever like said something you're like, wow, like I'll be like, wow, Laura, my God, that was just rude. Like, do you ever say something really rude and you're like, wow, I can't believe I just said that? Yeah. I hope it's not just me. Right? So I call that little thing, I call it Blade. So I imagine like a little gremlin on my shoulder. Did you guys, I don't know if you're too young to know gremlins. Right? The gremlin, you don't know gremlins? Oh my gosh, I'm so old. So,
no, I do. It's one of my favorites.
Okay. So I picture like Blade, like this really just like nasty little mean thing is called Blade right over here. I'm like, yeah, I see you. That's okay. Right. So then we start making friends with this little gremlin. But, that little gremlin is not me, because you are not your thoughts. There's a percentage of how many thoughts are actually facts. And I always want to look up what it is, and I don't remember, but I can tell you it's phenomenally lower than you imagine as far as the facts. Most of what the good majority of what you think are not facts, right? But we use that information to move forward in the world like it's true. But it's only your truth, is not the truth. And so we'll do an exercise at some point to bring that forth a little more of how you can begin getting out of, that sort of storytelling and to notice more what the facts are in your experience. I believe we'll do that in chapter 4. I don't quite remember. All right, so let's see. What else have I got for you? Oh, so negative thinking. That's what I was going at with the story. So we all have negative thoughts. We're actually primed to see the negative. So I know some of you are psychology majors and you may know this. And we think something's wrong with us because we think negative things. But it's actually part of our survival mechanism. Because, for example, many long time ago, our ancestors, they needed, in order to survive and stay safe from, the predators like the lion and whatever, okay, they had to be able to identify that there's a threat, okay, and then there's fight, freeze, or flight, freeze, or flee. Okay, so either freeze, or you're gonna fight, right? Or you're gonna I'm out of here. Okay, so that's natural. The thing is that your body doesn't know that you're not physically in harm's way at this moment. Your body reacts the same no matter what, okay, regardless of what that looks like. So if in your mind now you're doing this thing, you can elicit reactions in your body that for something that's not even occurring. And later we'll do an exercise for that too, because we're running out of time. I think it's quite fascinating. But here's the interesting part, which is not so wonderful for us so much, is that this neurologist talks about negative thoughts being like Velcro and positive thoughts being like Teflon. Are you familiar with what those two things are? And I ask because I've had kids in my class that don't. Okay, good. So Velcro, you know what Velcro is? Yes, yes. Teflon is something that they put on pans so that your stuff doesn't stick. So your food doesn't stick on the pan. That's Teflon. So essentially, negative experiences stick way better than positive experiences that tend to slide off more. So next time we'll be talking about gratitude. But as we open to these moments of well-being, as we begin to let those sit in our body, in our nervous system, as we become more aware and more curious, as we practice gratitude and let these things in and really let them soak in and see the good and in our life, okay, and all the things we have to be grateful for, we can start creating these sort of treasure trove of positive experiences, and those connections begin to wire more. So neurons that fire together wire together, they say. So you'll be able to access the positive experiences more quickly, and they actually deepen the grooves in your brain. So they begin to change the way that your brain works. So as we let these things in and you begin having these experiences and moments of well-being, don't miss them. Don't miss them. Because as you begin to notice and you let them sink in, try to let them in for at least 15 seconds. Seems like an eternity. But try to really let them in. You notice this is a moment of well-being. Let it soak in, because those will begin to reshape your brain and get you out of that constant negative space. You're still going to have it, but as you become more aware, it's not going to consume you, and it's not going to be your motivator. Okay, so this is a practice. So that's the other thing that I want you to do this week. I want to do one more thing as we're running out of time before I read our poem. Okay, I want you to take your hands. First, take one. How's that? I want you to just look at it. Just look at your hand. Okay, just be curious about it, just like we were with the raisin. noticing the ridges on it, turning it. Just really focusing on, as you move your hand, you may notice you have thoughts about your hand, where it's been, things you've done with it. But just notice them and don't judge them. Yeah. And taking your other hand and looking at that, kind of moving them together, noticing that. And then bringing them together and gently closing your eyes and noticing the sensation of your hands as you rub them together, Noticing the feeling of your fingers, the sensations along your palm as you do that. And then rub them faster, and we're going to kind of really get some friction going. And then stop and notice what's there. You might feel a tingling, a heat. Noticing what's there. Okay, gently opening your eyes. So you begin to notice the feeling, the sensation of things, and not just your thought about them. That's another way to practice mindfulness. Presence. So you're not always having to sit meditating to do that, although we're going to practice that. But then later, as we not only notice the breath, but we notice sensations in the body, just like you noticed in your hands. And so this week, one of the things I want you to do as you go throughout your day is take something you normally do mindlessly, like brushing your teeth, washing your face, driving, and notice in that moment, right? So the sensation of brushing your teeth, what is that like? How is your hand moving? What does the toothpaste feel like? How are your feet on the floor, right? How do they feel? So just being really present for little things at the moment you're doing them. So it takes no time because you're already doing things, right? So you just begin to notice the feelings as you do things, noticing even your surroundings, noticing when you're washing your hands, right? Now we're all supposed to be washing our hands, right? That whole wash your hands, right? You can practice mindfulness when you're washing your hands. Notice what it feels like. When you're doing dishes, that we're like, oh, I'm so annoyed and usually lost in thought doing dishes because it's like, who cares? I don't really want to do this, right? So just noticing when you're using the sponge, when you're washing the dish, it becomes a whole new experience, practicing presence in those moments. So choose an activity this week that you can do that sort of practice. Okay. I'm going to leave you with a poem. Let me get it up over here. It's actually on my computer. That I really, really love. It's called The Cookie Thief by Valerie Cox. A woman was waiting at the airport one night. With several long hours before her flight, she hunted for a book in the airport shop, bought a bag of cookies, and found a place to drop. She was engrossed in her book, but happened to see that the man beside her, as bold as could be, grabbed a cookie or two from the bag between, which he tried to ignore to avoid a scene. She read, munched cookies, and watched the clock, as the ghastly cookie thief diminished her stock. She was getting more irritated as the minutes ticked by, thinking, if I wasn't so nice, I'd blacken his eye. With each cookie he took one too. When only one was left, she wondered what he'd do. With a smile on his face and a nervous laugh, he took the last cookie and broke it in half. He offered her half, and he ate the other. She snatched it from him and thought, oh, brother, this guy has some nerve. And he's also so rude. Why didn't he even show any gratitude? She had never known when she had been so galled, and sighed with relief when her flight was called. She gathered her belongings and headed for the gate, refusing to look at the thieving ingrate. She boarded the plane and sank in her seat, then sought her book, which was almost complete. As she reached in her bag, she gasped with surprise. There were her bag of cookies in front of her eyes. If mine are here, she moaned with despair, then the others were his, and he tried to share. Too late to apologize, she realized with grief that she was the rude one, the ingrate, the thief. Yeah. All right, ladies. Thank you for your time tonight. And you've got some things we'll be working on this week. Your mindfulness, your meditation, and remembering your intention, and continue moving forward with that, okay? I really would love for you guys to post on the app, because I know that when we're not connecting throughout the week between classes and life gets in the way, because it does, that even with the best of intentions, without any accountability, that, and because we're learning something relatively new for most of you in some form or fashion, or that you're trying to reestablish a habit, that we can just let it slide. But guess what? There's nobody more important than you, and nobody can do it but you. So no matter what it is you have to do, you must put yourself first. So set the intention and work toward it, okay? And share about it on the app. Whether it's something uplifting, something you did, but connect with one another, because there's really something about doing this work in a community together and knowing that you're not alone than just doing it on your own. Because otherwise you could read the book and just be like, okay, I read the book and I did it. But there's something about the experience of it in a shared space that really makes it impactful. So it's for your benefit to share with one another and stay connected, okay? All right. I'll see you on the app. And I'll see you next Sunday. Have a good week. Bye.
Bye.